What's up, sports fans, or should I say college football fans? So, today we're going to talk a little bit about the top 25 poll, which just came out yesterday. I actually recorded this yesterday, but had some issues and weren't able to get it out yesterday. So, we're going to get it out today on Thursday. So, today we're going to talk about the top 25, going to talk a little bit about the games last week, and going to preview the games this week. So, let's start off with the top 25. You have the AP and the coaches poll in front of you. So we'll talk about the movement and what happens in the games this past week. So starting off with as far as the movement and what happened in the games last week, you can see right there the number one team in the country is the Georgia Bulldogs. Had a pretty easy win, struggled in the first half, but got it together. But a team like Georgia, you can kind of expect that. They lost a lot of weapons on offense. Took a while to get things going on offense. We're talking, what was it, 6-3 or something like that at halftime, and they ended up blowing Clemson away. I think Clemson's going to have a tough season this year. I don't think they're a top 25 team. I think the ACC is weak enough that you'll see them in the top 25, though. At the end of the year, they'll probably go 8-4, 7-5 at worst. I think Dabo's big problem, and I think we all know this, is he's not moving along with time as far as the portal and all of that, but we'll worry about Dabo later. Number one, Georgia, they look dominant. 57 of the 62 first place votes. The other 5 went to Ohio State. Ohio State rolled this week. We're going to be ready to see what they look like when they get into conference play and play some tougher opponents, but they're going to be really good. I think Ryan Day's got that thing rolling over there. Texas, wow. Going to talk a little bit about the Texas-Michigan game. That's going to be huge. Texas went up one spot this week in the AP poll from number 4 to number 3. Also in the coaches poll, one spot up. Texas, they look really good. Arch Manning got a chance to play, and Arch looked pretty good as well. So Quentin Ewers, I don't think Arch is going to play too much time unless Ewers gets hurt, but that's going to be a really good team. Definitely a national championship contender. Alabama, they looked really good. Looks like a seamless transition so far from Nick Saban, but we all know Nick Saban is arguably the greatest coach to ever coach college football. So it's going to be interesting to see how Bama looks. They also went up one spot. Notre Dame went up 2 spots in the AP poll. They're actually number 7. They actually stayed the same in the coaches poll, but they go up 2 spots in the AP poll. They picked up a gritty win against Texas A&M. I don't think it was a beautiful win, but to go on the road and that environment and get the win is nice. That's an SEC environment at night. Those fans were fired up. That was not an easy win to get. So give Notre Dame props for that win. And their schedule's fairly easy from here on out. So I think we'll definitely see Notre Dame in the playoff. Ole Miss comes in at number 6 in the AP. They're actually number 5, up one spot in the coaches poll. They didn't have much resistance this week. They got a tough schedule coming up in the SEC. They play the Bayou Bengals. They play Alabama. We'll see how things go for Ole Miss. Oregon comes in at number 7 in the AP, number 6 in the coaches poll. I think Oregon's going to be really good. They struggled a little bit this week, hence the reason why they dropped 4 spots in the AP and 3 spots in the coaches poll. I think Oregon's going to get it together, but this first week did not look good for them, and that's why they're down, because they had a lot of issues with Fresno State. Fresno State stayed in that game. Penn State's number 8 in the AP poll. Relatively easy win. They went up one spot in the coaches poll from 9 to 8. Number 9 in the AP poll is Missouri, up 2 spots, up 1 spot in the coaches poll to number 10. Missouri is going to be really good this year, and they have a really favorable schedule as well. They can reel off a lot of wins this year before you might see them drop. Then you go to number 10, and you go to the Michigan Wolverines, down 1 spot to 9 in the coaches poll. Didn't think they looked particularly great. They struggled around a little bit, and I think they're going to struggle around a good bit this year. You look at all of the defections of players, obviously losing Jim Harbaugh, and I think they're going to have a tough time this year. I think Texas is going to smash them pretty good this week, not to get in that prediction early, but I think Michigan's a 4-loss team. I don't think they're a playoff team this year. Utah's number 11 in both polls, up 1 spot. The big jumper is Miami, up 7 spots in the AP poll, up only 4 spots in the coaches poll. Who knows? Is the U back? That's the question. Do we have the return of the U, or are they still the poo they've been for the last maybe 20 years? That program has not been the same ever since Kellen Winslow did the, I'm a effing soldier bit against Tennessee. They've not been the same. But, I really like the way this Miami team looked. They got a couple of the best transfers that were out in the portal. Obviously, they got the best quarterback that was in the portal. They got one of the best running backs that was in the portal who looked really good. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think his name was Martinez. I don't have this in front of me, but man, Miami looked really good in that game. And the ACC is so wide open for them. If Miami doesn't lose a game somewhere that they shouldn't lose, they should run through the ACC because Florida State looks like trash. We haven't gotten there yet, but they look like trash. USC at number 13, big win of the week, up 10 spots in the AP poll, up 9 spots in the coaches poll to number 14. USC got a big win. That looked like 2 really good teams. Not going to dog my hometown Tigers for that game. I thought LSU played well, except for the undisciplined, stupid penalties that the Tigers need to avoid. But I thought USC played really good. I think it looks like they have a quarterback there. And I think USC is going to have a really good season. They're definitely a playoff contender in my book. And actually, Tennessee's number 14 and number 12 in the coaches poll, up 3 in the coaches and 1 in the AP poll. They got a big game this week against NC State, who's ranked at the bottom of the poll, so they'll get a good test this week. Oklahoma, number 15 and number 13. Oklahoma hadn't been tested yet, but they will be tested plenty in the SEC. Oklahoma State at number 16 and number 17. They had a win this week against the defending national champions of the FCS, referring to South Dakota State. So I'll give them some props for that win. That's against a good team, a lower level, howbeit, but a good team. Oklahoma State's going to have a nice season this year. They usually do have a nice season, but the thing is, can they get above that 9-3 type season and make the playoffs and make a run? That's the question. Kansas State at number 17 and 16. They got Tulane this week. We know Tulane's a solid program. They've been really good the last few years, so that'll be a good test for Kansas State. We'll see if they're a legit contender. The Bayou Bengals dropped to number 18 and number 19. I think LSU played well except for the dumb penalties in that game. I think the Tigers need to clean it up the next several weeks going into the Ole Miss game. I think LSU will romp, starting with Nicholls State this week, and then South Carolina. I think they will romp going into the Ole Miss game. The Ole Miss game will be tough, but I think the Tigers will get payback on the highly ranked Rebels. And then there's Alabama down the road. So there's a lot of opportunity for LSU to make the playoff. They got 1 loss now. They can only lose 1 more, in my opinion. Kansas at 19, they played Linden Woods, so they weren't tested. They weren't tested at all this week. They play Illinois. I think Illinois will test them some. Illinois is a pretty good program. Not great, but definitely a test for the Jayhawks. It's nice to see the Jayhawks ranked in the top 20 this early in the season. Like to see that program back on its feet. As you know, I'm a big KU basketball fan, so I do like to see the football program do well also. Arizona coming in at number 20 and number 18. They haven't really been tested yet. They're in the Big 12 this year, so I think they can make a run through that Big 12. That Big 12 does not look like a conference that anyone's going to run away with. You look at Kansas, you look at Oklahoma State. There's some teams in there. It's going to be a very interesting conference. Can't wait to see how the Big 12 shakes out. You got Iowa coming in at 21 and 21. Iowa up 4 spots. Of course, that's a boring offense to watch. It's always, they always have a good defense. They always have a solid program. And they got the coolest tradition, the Children's Hospital Wave. You got to love that. They did that for a basketball game with Caitlin Clark they had there one year. It was pretty awesome. Of course, that's Iowa's hottest alum right now as far as fame. We all know Caitlin Clark, but we're not talking about her right now. We'll talk about her in future videos. Louisville Cardinals coming in at number 22 and moving into the poll from being unranked at 24 in the coaches. They're an interesting team to watch. Georgia Tech at 23, NC State 24, and 25 is Clemson. So those are all ACC teams. They're all going to be chasing down the Miami Hurricanes. So we'll see if the Miami Hurricanes can become the U of old and take that conference, which they haven't won since they've been in it, which is hard to believe. But I don't think Clemson stays in that top 25 long. But like I said earlier, they may be in the poll at the end of the year. The ACC is not that strong. I think they can go 8-4. They can be a fringe top 25 team. Georgia Tech, they beat Florida State, but that might not be saying a lot after we watched Florida State against Boston College. They looked like crap. Washington's number 25 just moved into the poll on the coach's side. And Washington's an interesting team because without their coach, Kellen DeBose, and with him going to Alabama, and of course losing Michael Penix Jr., not a lot of people are high on Washington. So we'll see if Washington can, come out and have a good season this year. They're in the Big Ten, so obviously they're playing some tough teams over there. So the road will be tough for them. So I'm going to stop on that end, and we're going to look at right now some previews of the games coming up this week. So we're going to share screens, and we're going to go to all right, so still pretty new to this as far as the college, as far as this channel goes. So here we go, Texas and Michigan. This is the big game that everyone's looking forward to this week. It's number 3 against number 10. It's in the big house. The big house is going to be wild. I think Texas is just a better team. Quentin Ewers, 260 yards, 3 touchdowns last week. He gets some real competition this week. I think they'll beat Michigan by 2 touchdowns. They're a 7.5-point favorite. I like them to cover that. Penn State should have no problem with Bowling Green. Oklahoma State and Arkansas is an interesting game. Oklahoma State's a 7.5-point favorite. If you're Oklahoma State and you want to show that you are a legitimate contender, you got to go out here and put it on an Arkansas team that's a weaker team in the SEC. Out of the 16 teams in the SEC, they may be the 14th or 15th best team in that conference. So you want to go out there and put it on that team and show that you're legit. I mentioned this game earlier. Kansas State, a 9-point favorite going to Yulman Stadium at Tulane. Tulane coming off a big win over my school, Southeastern Louisiana. That was a game where, it was a game where Southeastern Louisiana actually came out competitive for the first half, beat themselves because when you're an inferior team, sometimes you can't make mistakes. And in the second half, Tulane just absolutely rolled them. The game was probably closer as a whole than the final score indicated, but Tulane's a good football team, a good program. I like them to really challenge Kansas State. Not saying they're going to beat Kansas State or anything like that, but I like Tulane to challenge them in that game. I think I would take Tulane on the 9 points. Georgia Tech and Syracuse, only a 3-point favorite for Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's 2-0 right now. That's a team that, they got the quote-unquote big win against Uiagalelei in Florida State, but we saw the Seminoles against Boston College. They're not that good, so I think Syracuse can upset Georgia Tech in that game. And it's at Georgia Tech. It's in I want to say the Carrier Dome, but it's not the Carrier Dome anymore. It's the JMA Wireless Dome. I'll still call it the Carrier Dome. Georgia, Texas, Tennessee Tech. That's going to be a complete and utter mauling. Notre Dame and Northern Illinois. That should also be a pretty good beat down there. 4-touchdown favorite. The Irish should roll. Riley Leonard looked solid last week. He's going to have a good season. Iowa State, I think, is a very interesting matchup. Iowa is a 3-point favorite over the Cyclones, and I think the Cyclones have a chance in that game. Iowa's at home. I think that's pretty much a toss-up game. I'm going to tell you, I'll take Iowa in an ugly game, like a 16-10 type game. Louisville's a 30-point favorite over Jacksonville State, who recently moved up to the FCS level. They were a solid program on the moved up to the FBS level. They were a solid program on the FCS level. But Louisville should have no problem rolling in that game. Ole Miss should roll Middle Tennessee. They're a 42-point favorite. We know Lane Kiffin likes to put it on early and often. This is probably the blowout of the week right here. Miami Hurricanes, who looked really good this last week, excellent. And then they go against the Rattlers of Florida A&M. So I expect them to have no problem taking care of the Rattlers by 60 points maybe. Now, the Rattlers are a good program for their level as well. I don't want to diss them too much because they're a top 25 team on that level. They're not bad. They're probably the favorites to win the SWAC. Alabama against South Florida. Alabama easily in this one. They're a 30.5-point favorite. I think the Bulls are pretty good, but they're not on Alabama's level. Missouri, a 34.5-point favorite over Buffalo. That should roll in that game. Kansas and Illinois is an interesting game. The Jayhawks are a 5.5-point favorite at Illinois. The fighting Mark Walters, Professor Walters. Love that guy. Y'all know about Walters World, my favorite travel YouTube channel. And he's a great guy, him and his wife, Jocelyn. But, yeah, he's a professor there of marketing. But I like the Kansas Jayhawks to beat Illinois in this game. They're a 5.5-point favorite. I think it's going to be a really close game. Ohio State will roll Western Michigan. Tennessee should beat NC State in a close competitive game. NC State, they're a top 25 team here. They're at home. The Duke's Mayo Classic. I think they'll keep this game close. I don't know if I would bet the spread in this game because I think it's the type of game where Tennessee's up by 2-3 points late. They score a touchdown and pull away. LSU versus Nicholls, another one of these games. Nicholls are a really good team on that level. They're a top 25 team. They're the favorites to win the Southland Conference, but they're not competing with LSU. Totally different level. Nussmeier, I thought looked good last week, 308 yards, a couple touchdowns. Kyron Lacey is a monster. 7 catches, 94 yards. He's going to have a massive season for the Tigers this year. LSU rolls probably like 52-13. I don't think they're going to do nothing like 70 points or anything crazy because I think Nicholls is pretty good in that sense. Oklahoma will roll Houston, 29-point favorite. Clemson should bounce back against App State, but I would absolutely take App State in the 16.5 points. I don't think they're 16.5 points better than App State. Oregon versus Boise State, 19.5. Based off the way Oregon looked last week, one or two things are going to happen. Boise State's going to play the heck out of them in that game and easily cover the 19.5, or Oregon's going to get their head out of their butts and destroy Boise State because they were embarrassed about last week's showing. I take the first of it. I think Oregon's competitive here. I think Boise's competitive here. I think Oregon wins by 10. Arizona should have no problem with Northern Arizona. And then USC looked really good last week, getting 4 touchdowns and a hook against Utah State. I will take USC to cover that. Okay, so some exciting action this week. Look forward to having another vlog here about the college games, and we'll talk about the games that happen, and we'll go a little deeper into it. Hope all of you have a good day. You see, I'm a Miami Dolphin fan, so we'll be talking NFL on the next vlog. So as always, it's peace and football. Y'all have a good one.